When I think about the two biggest comedic influences of my childhood, it was Johnny Brennan and Weird Al Yankovic, diametrically opposed as you can imagine. But it's great to see a new album from you. When did you start making it?
I appreciate that. Thank you. Funny enough, I got a picture. I think it was 2 years ago. It was Weird Al Yankovic and myself at Steel. I think no, not Steel City. It was a Comic-Con in Portland, Oregon. And so it was funny because Al and I were supposed to work together years and years ago. And he actually created a song, "Don't Go Making Phony Calls."
Yes.
And from TLC. From TLC, it was with Left Eye Lisa. Remember that group? So, and it was their song, Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls. He changed it into Don't Go Making Phony Calls or something like that, and it was going to be a Jerky Boys thing. But it was funny. It was funny to actually we got a chance to meet each other. So yeah, no, this is interesting because it's been a long time coming. Fans have been asking for decades. I've been very busy with Family Guy and things like that, and the Jerky Boys always never went away. The Jerky Boys was there, and people were loving the albums for years. I had Jerky Boys 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 were out there, and then I made a ringtone album for people because at the time ringtones were like $4 or $5 a ringtone, which I thought was a ripoff. So I just gave like a shout out to the fans, a big thank you to the fans. I think I put 99 tracks, and they were all ringbacks and ringtones, and so there was a lot of stuff. But the actual making of a Jerky Boys record, like before I became famous, the whole bootleg thing. Everybody always refers back to the bootleg. Yeah. And that's what I felt like was necessary. I didn't make a record like to follow up or to beat another Jerky Boys record. You know what I mean? I just wanted to have that mindset that I had when I made the bootleg, because I wasn't making it for anybody but me and my brothers. And, just a way for, if anybody else wanted to enjoy my characters interacting. And that's kind of what the beauty of it was.
Right. I, of course, had the bootleg tape. I'm going to say 92, 93, somewhere around there. I got it. And I remember there were calls in there that you didn't hear on the first 2 albums. Yet, do I have it correct that a lot of what was on Jerky Boys 3 and 4 was previously recorded?
No. What it was is the bootleg was, and actually 93 is very late. I was already signed to I believe I was already signed to Atlantic Records at that time, 92-ish, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, the bootleg was on the streets in the 80s. I know Howard Stern got his hands on it, and Howard Stern was talking it up and it was going nuts. I guess that was sometime around 85, 84.
Wow.
Somebody came up to me at a family reunion up at my aunt's place in upstate New York, Wurtsboro, New York. There was every year they have these monster family reunions, the Brennans. Yeah. And funny enough, that was the last one I think I was ever at, but somebody came, my cousins are all coming up to me and they're like, Johnny, you're not going to fucking believe it. You're this, and you're all the skits that you do for Joe and Anthony. Joe, those are my brothers. Mm-hmm. So all the skits that you do at the house and you're recording them, and I'm still perplexed. I'm still like, I'm like, oh man, you mean like, yeah, it's all over the place where I'm going to college. It's here, it's there, it's everywhere. And they were telling me about the radio disc jockeys that are all talking about the stuff. And remember now, this is back in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
And Howard Stern, once he got his hands on it, that's when I said, oh boy, because he said, if anybody knows who this Frank Rizzo guy is, this is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. So if anybody knows, call into the station. And that's when there was all of these copycats and Tom, Dick, and Harry's calling in saying it was them. So I said, it's time for me, because I never wanted to, I didn't have any intentions of being famous. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I was, at the time, I was hanging off buildings in New York City. I was a scaffold worker. I was, and everybody is now the word on the street. Everybody's like, Johnny, oh man, your shit's everywhere. And I'm going like, holy crap! It looks like I'm not going to have a choice here. It looks like I'm going to be, it's going to hit. So anyway, Howard Stern, and then then the record companies, Atlantic Records, and the rest is history. But it was absolutely, you can't even put a word on, because at the time, if you remember, there was no computers, there was no social media, there was nothing. So the only way that this got around is people would make a copy of a cassette and they would hand it to a friend, and some people would make 10 copies and hand it to friends and family, and their exact words were, "You're not gonna fucking believe this. You gotta hear this." And that's how it spread. It was incredible.
I thought I knew a lot about your story, but I didn't realize that some of those tapes and calls happened in the mid 80s. Do you remember the first Saul Rosenberg call, around what year that was?
Well, yeah, if I wanted to, I could go way back into the 70s. I could even go back when I was a little kid doing those voices back in the 60s. When you're a little kid, you got the old the little tape cassette. But when the ones that got famous for me, the first are the ones that I was doing in the 80s, and that's what hit the streets. That's when it started to become super famous. And you could say some of the first, you could probably say Sal's Phobia, when he's talking about his shadow.
Yeah.
My shadow, it's always there when I'm in the bathtub trying to take a nice bath. And then Sal starts screaming and yelling. It's like, oh! And Sal's Phobia, Sal's eyeglasses, Sal blowing his hand off with fireworks. But they all go way, way, way back. And obviously Frank, the auto mechanic, and those are the ones that when they hit the streets, that everybody was like, man alive, we never heard anything like this. And that's when that was before they coined the whole thing reality. The whole term reality, because the Jerky Boys, those Jerky Boys characters, when they hit the scene, man, everybody was like, you're not going to believe this. But it was very cool. It was a very cool thing. And a lot of the biggest comedians at the time, big name comedians, said that it was such a breath of fresh air, because it wasn't the same old, some guy standing up on a stage in front of a red brick wall telling jokes. Yeah. This was something completely different, and such a different form of comedy, and it just took the world by storm. And it was also a wonderful thing, because it was very lighthearted. Mm-hmm. It was the character. It was mostly self-deprecating humor, even though Frank Rizzo would scare the bejesus out of people, But Frank, everyone to this day says, yes, Frank would really kind of scare the shit out of you, but. Man, I'll tell you what, there was something lovable about Frank. So everybody, sure. They were just a great combination. And the characters, I'm sure I've said it many, many years, the characters are based on my family members. Mm-hmm. They're just slightly exaggerated versions of when I do Frank Rizzo, I'm doing my dad. When I do Saul Rosenberg, I'm doing my mom. And even onto Mort Goldman in Family Guy. Yeah. That's another version of my mom when she used to get pissed off. And that's why, and you see the difference. Saul Rosenberg is much more calm and laid back, where Mort Goldman is always ready to throw down. He's a little bit more of a fighter than Saul. So that's why we call Mort Goldman Saul's long lost cousin.
I never made that connection with all that, the difference in dynamics. And I do want to ask you a little bit about that. But one of the constant topics that comes up when I'm doing interviews, I tape like 10 interviews a week. Inevitably, I'm going to ask about Van Halen, Kiss, or the Jerky Boys in some way. I'm still kicking myself when I interviewed Ed O'Brien from Radiohead a couple months ago. I forgot to ask about the Pablo Honey album and all that. But when I was talking to the former MTV VJ Kennedy last week, she told me a story of her and Henry Rollins and David Lee Roth listening to the first Jerky Boys album, and her and Henry Rollins cracking up, and David Lee Roth actually not laughing. And they're like, why aren't you laughing? And he's like, because these people don't know any better. They're not in on the joke. That is the first time I've ever heard somebody not get the Jerky Boys.
David Lee Roth, he's a character, but I know Van Halen, they go way back. Eddie Van Halen, I actually know Marshall Burrell. Marshall Burrell managed me. So Marshall managed me in and around the year 2000. And so Marshall, the whole story of Marshall Burrell and Van Halen. And,
yes.
And so Eddie and Marshall, very good friends. And it was funny. A few years back, there was a book that came out, and Marshall was on the phone with me, and Eddie was there. I said, hey, Ted, Eddie's like, yeah, tell him I said hello. We never got a chance to talk though, but Van Halen was always huge Jerky Boys fans. But David Lee Roth, that sounds perfect for David because David, he's definitely a character. Jane Kennedy, it's funny because that whole time Jane was, on MTV at that time, and it's so funny. I'm sure I'll get a chance to tell her someday. We were at Woodstock together, Woodstock '94, and it's funny. I was walking and I just finished my little stint on the stage. It was, I'll never forget, Sunday morning, and I went up on stage, and all I did was say a couple of things inside. I said, 500,000 people out there, just an ocean of people, and I had to deal with Walt Disney Pictures. I couldn't show my face. So I had to wear a bandana because the movie we were working on the movie. So I went up on stage with a bandana and I'm looking out at this ocean of people. And I just said, yes, excuse me. I need help. I think I lost both my shoes in all that mud. And that's all I said. And you just hear 500,000 people. I never heard anything like it in my life. Right. And then I said a couple of Frank Rizzo lines and this and that and the other thing. Then they took me out. I got out away from the stage and, there was a massive crowd down waiting for the limousines. And just as I'm walking, I lift my head up. I almost slammed right into her. It was Jane Kennedy. And, who knows where she was going, but it was funny. I always said, yeah, someday I'll probably get to tell her that story. But, yeah, that was a big time back then, because at that particular time, the Jerky Boys was just insane. You're talking about motion pictures, your books, and it was just incredible.
I remember that weird MTV VHS tape that you guys did where they had the temps and you were prank calling them and it was like surveillance taped and all that. Were there a lot of one-off projects for the Jerky Boys that were discussed but didn't happen? Was it one of those scenarios?
Not really. Everything that I have to say, knock on wood, everything that I ever did, everything we ever did, it was golden. It was golden. I mean, I got what that video you're talking about, that you see everybody tell you right up straight. They say, well, that video created Punked and all these other videos that would come many years later. Yeah. And with this whole inspiration of this hidden camera, we were doing hidden cameras long before they had Taxi Cab Confessions or whatever the hell it was. So yeah. We were doing that shit eons ago. And it was a project for Sony and MTV. Combination Sony MTV, and it was it was a platinum selling video. I have the plaque on my wall. I mean, who buys that many videos, right? But because it was a Jerky Boys project, Jerky Boys product, people wanted to have it. They had to have it, and that's the way it's been through all of the years with Jerky Boys. People, it's a beautiful thing because when I went to sell beer for Anheuser-Busch. Budweiser beer, same thing, through the roof, everything, because people love the characters. And I always tell everybody this, it's not about, it's not, of course it has something to do with me at the end of the day, because I create the characters and I voice the characters, but it's about those lovable characters. That's what people really get a kick out of. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's great stuff. And when you see Sal and how many people love Sal, how many people love Jack Torse, think about my gay character. My gay character, when I was doing my gay character, it was taboo. I mean, I remember even doing commercials for Anheuser-Busch, Budweiser. I remember doing commercials for them. They focus grouped my gay character commercials, my Jack commercials. And Jack Torse was amazing. Everybody, they actually rented Limelight in New York City. The nightclub Limelight. Oh, yeah. And they had like a party for gay people to come out and to focus group the Johnny's gay character Budweiser commercials. They absolutely went nuts. They said that these should be on the air. They're incredibly funny. But at the end of the day, see, this is what I'm trying to tell you. At the end of the day, Budweiser was still like, yeah, you know what? I don't know. And they didn't air them. They didn't air them. Isn't that funny? And that you're only talking about 20 years ago with that particular project. And even then they were careful. Today that would be just a no-brainer. You see? Yeah. So very interesting angles. And again, once again, Everybody loved RuPaul. RuPaul, huge fan of mine. RuPaul loves Jack Torrance. Everybody, that they get it, once again, Jack Torrance, everybody, we always say, that's the original diva bitch, Jack Torrance. Because Jack Torrance, nothing made him, nothing excited him. Everything was just old hat to him.
It's old hat to him, sweetheart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I did that years ago, honey. That, like Jack, nothing excited him. But that's what was great about Jack and all of the characters. But just great stuff, man.
Right. So looking at everything that's going on, I'm curious because you've evolved with the times. For example, I remember the Jerky Boys 4 or 5 was on Laugh.com, which was a way too soon.com record company. But has the way that you record your phone calls changed, or are you still doing everything on speakerphone?
Yeah, well, see, that's what I'm saying too with that. It's a very, very, very awesome album. And a lot of people love it. Jerky Boys fans, diehards love it. That one that was up, but that's calls that I had. See, that's calls that I had in the can that I never thought to use because they were 9 minutes, 10 minutes. And I was like, yeah, they'll just never work. They're way too long. So right. I just put them aside and I never used them. But there weren't that many. There was only, I think, like 7 or 8 of them, maybe 9 of them. And they were really long. But people started asking me like crazy, Johnny, do you have any longer skits? So I said to myself, wow, you know what? Maybe I should try to put out a record with these long skits. But like I said, they were in the can. I had them. All I had to do was just put them on the record. And funny enough, that was Marshall Burrell we were just talking about.
Oh, yeah.
He owned Laugh.com.
But, he owned Laugh.com. I never knew that. See, when I think of Marshall Burrell, I think of the initial success of Van Halen, then all the success he did with the band Rat, and of course, who his uncle was.
Yes.
I never knew he managed you or Laugh.com was his. Wow.
Yes. Yep. George Carlin and I were actually on at the same time. George Carlin was a huge fan of the Jerky Boys. And I obviously, growing up as a kid, Carlin was fantastic. Funny enough, I loved Richard Pryor. I loved Carlin, and I always tell people, Bill Cosby, man. I understand, whatever went through in his life, whatever happened in his life, but that guy could get up on a stage and he could tell stories where you were literally pissing yourself, and he didn't say one curse word.
Right.
Not one. And I remember even through growing up as a kid and right into adulthood, Cosby was no joke. When it came to comedy, that guy was no joke. But, I understand, things happen and all the tragic nonsense that's gone on in his life. Very sad. But, when you're looking back at it, it's just things that, it's a crazy life,
Yeah.
But anyway, so that I was on there with Marshall Burrell, and that was 99, 98, 99.
Yeah.
But so that was that. But this new record, that's why I'm really excited about this new record because, I had to do, this was like I said, I had to just, and it was very strange because it took me a long time as well, because you got to have it here. You got to be in that mindset. And as well as I do, I don't have to tell you, look at like the world over these last year, 2 years, there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of stuff that, you're not really feeling too happy. You know what I'm saying? But you got to reach inside and you got to go to a place. I mean, I know it might not make any sense to you, or it might sound like to your listeners or your viewers may not make any sense, but it's you really need a place. You need to be able to get. If I'm going to do Saul Rosenberg, I got to have that place. If I'm going to do any of my characters, you gotta. It's like crazy. You got to get there. And that's what made me feel really good about this record because. Right off the top, I'm doing weird shit. I'm doing stuff that I didn't even think I was going to do. Certain characters coming out of my mouth that I said, wow, I kind of dig this because I'm not doing it for anybody but me.
Right.
I'm not sitting here trying to, because I'm doing it with that sense that I have no clue. Let me just go with this. Let's have some fun. And that's exactly how I did it decades and decades ago. And it became the Jerky Boys. So you know what? That I think it was just it was a little bit of a tough time, but I think it was pretty all in the end, and was very interesting. I don't know if you got a chance to see previews or the artwork yet or the cover. It's the original artist, Sean Taggart, the original artist. He was doing T-shirts. He was doing my T-shirt cartoon work back in the early '80s. So it's really amazing. Sean, and it's funny. There's a funny story behind it. It almost didn't happen, but that's a whole because we're trying different things, and Sean's doing his thing, and Sean is fucking terrific. He's amazing, and if you look at his work over the years, he's amazing. So, just a wonderful story, and when it almost didn't happen, I go to message the record label, send them an email, and just say to them, okay, use Sean's earlier drawing. And then, but I just before I say anything to the record label, I say, oh shit, there's an email from Sean Taggart. I open up the email and there's the record cover. And I was like, holy shit. I got on the phone and I said, Sean, that's it. That's it. It's fucking beautiful. So it was like almost like a miracle how it came together. And it's just awesome to have all of this together. To have it's just awesome.
The emphasis is usually going to be on the first two Jerky Boys albums, but I think that you've had some great classics beyond that. For example, the Hucklebuck, I think, is up there with among the best work that you ever did. So one thing that I'm curious about, aside from that compliment, for every good call you have, around how many bad calls or unusable calls do you think you have?
See, I put my right hand to God. My mom passed away in 2016. I swear on my mom, I don't have anything. That's why this I don't have anything. Like I said to you, I don't have anything in the can. And it's funny, I'm teaching myself now. I was always a very big believer. Stealing to me is pathetic. Stealing is pathetic. And in the comedy world, I've seen things that would make anybody sick. They have no qualms about stealing people's work and making believe. The worst part about it is making believe it's theirs.
Right.
That's the worst part. So I was this asshole going back all these decades that I would never bite off myself. I didn't want to do two this. I didn't want to do two of that. But now I'm teaching myself, nobody gives a shit. Don't be so hard on yourself. If you got something that's a pretty decent idea, as long as the calls are fantastic, nobody gives a shit if you do two auto mechanics or you call two garages. Or I was just way too hard on myself. Way too hard on myself. So there's no need to be that hard on yourself. If you got two great calls, who cares? But so that's the thing. But on this now, I never had, the only time I had stuff laying around was the one we just talked about. It's called the Jerky Tapes. Mm-hmm. And I had, I believe, 8 or 10 of these calls that were 10 minutes long. And I didn't think anybody would want to hear that. So I never even thought to look at them. So I said, shit, let me try it. And that's the only time I've ever had anything later. And I'll never forget being asked over the years. People would say, Johnny, do you have anything laying around that you may not have thought was good that you could just use on a record? I said, I wish. That was the big thing I was saying. I wish I had stuff laying around, but no, I don't have. That's why this album was so hard, because I had to do everything. And now the beautiful thing is now I would probably say I probably have about 10 calls now, brand new calls, maybe 15, maybe even 16 or 17 that are brand new, that are just laying around, and they're fantastic. They're really, really fantastic. So that's a good thing. And it's kind of made me say to myself, you know what? Even if I try and just do 1 or 2 a day, mm-hmm. But it was so strange though to get into that mindset. I'd be like, yeah, maybe I'll do one later this afternoon, and I'll be like, and it never happens. But slowly, you're never too old to learn, So you're starting to teach yourself to try to change habits, So I guess that answers your question. But no, I didn't. No, nothing laying around. I wish.
My last question before my last compliment to you is, Johnny, any last words for the kids?
Yeah, it's funny. You mean my kids or all kids?
All kids.
All kids? You know, I would say to all kids, enjoy life, you know, especially as you're growing up.
Mhm.
Just enjoy your life and don't, you know, nobody has to tell you, you know, how your life should be lived. It's always absolutely fantastic. Listen to your moms and your dads and get your educations and all that stuff. But I would say to children, if they have dreams, you know, any kind of dream, well, you know, I don't care if it's jumping motorcycles, if it's, I don't know, you know, building bridges, you know, to just go after it. Go after it as hard as you can, and especially if it's something that you love. You see too many kids; they might have dreams of being artists. They might have dreams of being rappers or being guitar players or being something that they really want in their heart. Go for it, you know. Go for it. You know, this is an amazing thing. It's an opposite flip side story for me because I was doing characters. I think probably since I could walk. And I, as a little kid, I was mimicking my mom when I was only 5 years old and getting smacked around for it. But that was just me mimicking characters. And I always had an ability, because I lived in so many different neighborhoods, to pick up dialects, Spanish, Greek, pick them up. And I was a little kid doing Greek voices, Spanish voices. I tell the story many times over the years about my gay voice, Jack. It was 1966 when I was doing Jack tours. Because of a guest that was staying at our house, and that's another story. But again, to get back to what we said about the kids, you know, the flip side was that I wasn't looking to be famous ever. I wasn't looking to be, but sometimes you create something in this world that can't be contained. And even though, you know, I've learned now I appear at shows. I was at Woodstock in front of 500,000 people. So, you know, so you have to force yourself. That's a great thing to tell the kids. I try to teach this to my youngest daughter. Force yourself out of your comfort zone. Force yourself out of your comfort zone, and you will be shocked at the wonderful things that'll happen.
Well said. And
you know, and I remember Adam Carolla. I don't know what show I saw him on one time. He said the same thing. I think it was on Dancing with the Stars or something. And Carolla said very similar. He said, every time he forces himself out of his comfort zone, good things can happen. Good things might happen. Good things can come. You know, you never know what's going to happen. But I do live by that, and I've been teaching myself that over the last 15, maybe 12, 15 years. And that's a great message to the kids. Force yourself out of if you feel comfortable, you feel safe, just being here and not, you might have gifts that you don't even know. Force yourself out of your comfort zone.
Cool. And that promised compliment is a couple of years ago when my wife and I got married in Vegas, we chose every song in the order that is to be played. The DJ just had to press play. 6, 7 songs in, music stops, Heard at Work plays in the middle of the wedding. Horrifies the whole wedding party. So the Jerky Boys were played at our wedding. Thanks to you for the many, many years of entertainment, Johnny.
Thank you. You'd be surprised. I do a lot of the like weddings, and people love the Jerky Boys at their weddings. But that is a great story. I love it. Heard at Work today, you said?
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. That's one of the, you know, people can all Google it. It's one of the all-time greats. That's fantastic, man. I appreciate everything.
Exactly. Well, keep up the greatness. Glad to hear there's more coming in the very near future. Just keep up all the stuff there. So glad you're back.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the interview. Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny.
Paltrocast.